You are listening to Action Design Radio, podcast of the Action Design Network, a globally recognized nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting all aspects of behavioral science. We bring you leading researchers and practitioners to discuss the latest behavioral science insights and how they can practically be applied to make a better world for all. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy today's episode.
Penn's Master of Behavioral and Decision Sciences program congratulates our instructor, Zarak Khan, for co-editing the new book, Building Behavioral Science in an Organization, featuring MBDS Advisory Board members Charlotte Blank, Namika Sagara, Greg Schwartz, and MBDS alum Nicole Grabel. In the Master of Behavioral and Decision Sciences program at Penn, students learn the theoretical and practical tools to address a variety of real-life problems and explore the science of decision-making using real-world applications and a hands-on approach. Check out our unique interdisciplinary program and see how you can start affecting changes in the world. Visit www.upenn.edu/mbds.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Action Design Radio. I'm your host, Zarak Khan. With me, as always, your other host, Erik Johnson. Hi, Erik.
Hello, Zarak, and hello, listeners. It's good to see you again.
It is good to see you again. Any exciting things happen with you since the last time we've recorded?
Geez, it's been since June, right?
I think so.
Okay, so many things. I got married for one, so that's exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I got married, went on a honeymoon, and yeah, it's hard to think of anything much bigger than that, I suppose.
I think my biggest achievement was attending your wedding and being recognized by my voice as, quote, the podcast guy.
That was nice. I had multiple people like almost towards the end be like, wait, which one's Zarak? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's Zarak, yeah. Because so yes, definitely was a celebrity.
Just listen for the voice.
One of the more notable attendees. Yeah.
Well, it's great to be recording with you again. And we are very excited to have Namika Sagara with us today to talk about market research, among other things. So Namika is the co-founder and the chief behavioral officer of Syntoniq. Prior to Syntoniq, she was the founder and president of the Behavioral Science Center at Ipsos. And she's founded and was president of her own behavioral economics consulting firm. She's an award-winning international speaker. She's been published in prestigious journals, all kinds of media outlets, including our very own Building Behavioral Science in an Organization book, where she wrote the market research chapter and contributed ideas to sort of the building a team area as well. From her experience at Ipsos. So we're going to dive into that today. Namika, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So one question that I think might be helpful to jump into at the top for folks that aren't as savvy with market research, we also had a chapter in our book on marketing written by Erik here. We'll probably talk to him about that on a different episode. What is the difference between those two fields? How do they fit together and how are they sort of distinct from one another?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So market research is, as kind of name suggests, it's about researching, understanding consumers, patients, physicians, investors, whoever your target audience are, what they do, what they think, how they think, what they like. Understanding those behaviors and attitude and perception can feed into marketing strategies and marketing communication to influence behaviors. So I think when it comes to behavior science, I feel like we tend to talk a little bit more about sort of like influencing behaviors, nudging behaviors, changing behaviors, which definitely is a big part of behavior science and definitely an important part of behavior science. But also behavioral science can help understand people better, right? It's a science of human behavior. So basically market research, along with behavioral science, is to understand people so that we can eventually influence their behaviors.
I like that. It's almost a precursor to a lot of the other things that we talk about, the sort of understanding. So So,
and actually, I might even come in from the marketing perspective. And I've also worked in product a lot too. And market research isn't just unique to like marketing. Like market research can be very independent of marketing itself.
Great
where
point.
market research, you're more, as it says, like understanding the market. So like, what is the market? Who are the people? Where their preference, all those things. Then marketing would then take that information and sort of build a strategy to connect with them. But market research can also really influence product as well, or like everything else. Where that market research leads into how should we build the product, who should be for, then how should we communicate them. So it's really a foundation for a lot of other work. That's the great thing about it.
So in a field that is already sort of dedicated to understanding people, what is the unique kind of value add of behavioral science there?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, right? That's something that I've asked a lot since kind of getting into market research. So how I think about it is, so market research is a little bit more descriptive. What do they do? What do they like? How they use product? What kind of product do they like? And what are, and then also the market, right? Well, who are the competitors? What's the market share? But behavioral science, at least the type of the behavioral science I do for market research, is to go a little bit beyond that. Not just the surface level behavior that consumer can sort of more or less accurately report, but what drives those behaviors? Why do they like those products? Why do they use those products? What are the fundamental core motivation that those products are fulfilling? And what are the non-conscious, subconscious, and contextual factors that influence them? Because those are the things that consumer usually cannot tell you, right? So that's when kind of behavioral science comes in. And really for me, like I think it just provide a deeper and more holistic understanding of people.
Yeah, you've got this great example in your chapter on sunscreen. And I don't know. I thought that was like I've used this example many times since reading your chapter. It might be helpful for listeners as well if you can walk us through sort of like this is sort of highlights the additional contribution that bringing a behavioral science perspective or behavioral science research can bring to a traditional market research project.
Yeah. So no, I really like that sunscreen example too. So I'm glad you like that as well. So imagine like you're selling sunscreen, or you're interested in who use sunscreen, how they use sunscreen, how often they use sunscreen, what kind of brand they use. Those are kind of things that market research can help, right? But what behavioral science can help is why do they use sunscreen? Why do they use particular brand? And one of the study we've conducted, so we actually use this framework or theories called regulatory focus framework. It's not as known in the industry. I've been talking about for a while, so I feel like some people got to learn about it, but it's a fairly established framework in academia. If you put in the scholar.google.com, you get a lot of hits, right? Sort of simply put, people have two different motivations. One is promotion and another is prevention. So if you're promotion focused and using a sunscreen, you might use sunscreen to really have fun on the beach, right? But if you're prevention focused, you're using sunscreen so that you're protected. So promotion is really more about achieving their dreams and sort of having the ideal life, being the ideal self. But when it comes to sort of a prevention mindset, it's more about sort of security and protection. So when it comes to product, they're thinking, how does this sunscreen help me, get protected from sun? While promotion is about how does this product help me just having the best vacation ever? So sort of the more or less traditional market research, it's really difficult to get to that point because again, it's really rely on self-reported behavior or observed behavior where consumers not going to be like, I use sunscreen because I have a promotion focus, right? Like nobody going to be able to tell you that. So that's where behavioral science comes in and say, what's the relevant framework here? And based on talking to stakeholders, reviewing past research, we usually select the most relevant framework, because we don't want to go with the framework and kind of force fit, into the framework. So I usually select the framework after learning the business challenges and after learning their goals of research, and then really see what customer has to say through the lens of behavioral science, so that we can get to really the core reason of why people use sunscreen.
So building on you mentioned some frameworks you use. Maybe a lead in to think about when we think about market research, what are some of the tools that are types of research, frameworks, things like that might typically be used in a market research function, and how might those differ from a behavioral science perspective?
Yeah, so just like behavioral science, or at least in academic behavior science, we also use quite a bit of surveys. So market research, there's a lot of survey works. So it's more quantitative, it's self-reported, get us great insights, more scalable. There's a lot of qualitative work as well. So you can talk to consumers on, we call idea in-depth interviews, or these days oftentimes virtually. We can have more of a group discussion, I think, kind of sometimes known as a focus group. We can also scrape social media data, right? What people are saying about this particular brand on Twitter. We also do online bulletin board. It's just kind of the platform for invited participant joins that platform, and the moderator asks question. Hey, how do you think about product X? How do you feel about this service? And then have a moderated conversation. So it's really, pretty diverse, but I think the most common one is survey.
Beyond the surveys and tools, so you started talking about frameworks. That's I really thought you brought up sort of frameworks and even stuff like literature reviews as part of this toolbox as well from a behavioral science perspective. So describe a little bit like the value of frameworks from a behavioral science perspective applied to market research, and how you may select those, and which ones might be good examples that you found the most useful in this types of work.
Yeah, in terms of framework, definitely I like regulatory focus, because it's really get to the core of human motivation. And I think that's something that, at least type of the market research, it's really resonate with clients. And also with combining with this theory called regulatory fit theory, it's really help with activation part, because I think the challenge of market research sometimes is, so what, right? Okay, I understand that 30% of people prefer strawberry flavor over blueberry flavor, or the 40% of people do this and that. But when it comes to marketing, well, like, how do we actually use that data? But if you understand why people do what they do, such as they use sunscreen because they want to protect their kids, or they use sunscreen because they just want to have the best vacation possible, then you can already kind of starting what kind of marketing communication you should have, right? Like you should select the images and language, and that's really resonate with that particular motivation. So I like framework for that reason, rather than, let's say, heuristic and biases. Heuristic and biases is, I have a background in behavior economics, so that's judgment decision making. Definitely something that I spend a lot of years studying. It's great, but sometimes the challenge is what to do with that. How do I do with the information that people are loss averse? How do I, do with the information that people are present bias? So that's why I tend to go with the frameworks that I feel like it's really more helpful for the clients to actually use the insights we generated. But that said, I know that you also mentioned kind of literature review. So what we do is basically, again, understanding what their clients are looking for, what their research goals are, and then do the literature review. And then sometimes we go with the regulatory focus, sometimes we might go with the control laboratory, sometimes we go with something else, we go with a habits model. That's kind of how we go. And sometimes we have to go into interview session and then realize, what, this is really the framework, because sometimes clients might not have the best hypothesis. Sometimes we just have to listen to consumers. And then in parallel, we're doing literature review to see which framework is the best.
I'm curious. I mean, you've I think laid out in a pretty compelling way, like the ways that these are complementary, or how behavioral science can sort of support traditional market research. What have you observed in terms of like adoption by market research firms? I mean, I think a number of them like have behavioral science teams, or at least sort of seemingly express interest in behavioral science. Have you seen like adoption there and integration, or are there barriers that you've either observed or experienced that are sort of preventing that?
Yeah, so I think definitely my samples are biased, because if they're not interested in behavioral science, they're probably not talking to me. So I'm definitely biased on that point. But that said, coming to think about it, most of the clients I have spoken to, more often than not, it's their first behavioral science project. So that means I think they've been interested, or at least they've been open to, they just haven't had a chance to apply behavior science into their market research projects. So, yes, I think there's definitely interest. I think a lot of clients probably don't have the internal sort of the capability yet, or they don't know who apply behavior science into market research. So I think it's a good sign that there's a lot of new clients coming into the field, but I think there's a lot more opportunities.
And sort of on the firm side of things, right? So you established the behavioral science function at Ipsos, and from our prior conversations, right, it sounds like they knew that this was something they wanted to do, and they were kind of looking for the right person, and sort of brought you in as that person. What was the experience of that? Like the whole umbrella of our partnership on this book, right, was sort of helping people build and establish behavioral science functions within their organization. So what are the insights that you might have from having done that already?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of hard work, long hours for sure. That's for sure. But, I think I was really, really fortunate, because I had a very strong support from the leadership team. And I think that is really, really important when you're bringing in or you're building new capabilities, because you need a buy-in, you need a support from people, not just from your hiring manager, but just as an organization as a whole. And what I was also fortunate about was there was growing interest within the organization, at least in part of the organization already. And there were a couple of people that were not necessarily behavioral scientists, but really believed in behavioral science. So they've been advocates. So they're really looking for somebody with expertise to come in and help them. So I did a lot of sort of like the webinars and training, and it was well attended. So that was really good. But I think, to be honest, the challenge in the first couple of years is, how do we apply behavior science, right? Like, I've been an academic for most of my life, and I knew behavior science. I knew how people make decisions, but that doesn't mean that I know how to help our clients immediately. So definitely there was some learning curve, but again, the people, they were so excited about behavioral science. I was able to partner with the people there and really leverage my strength and their strength. Their strength is obviously market research. They know the industry, they know the clients. How to talk about behavioral science to our clients to really articulate the value of it. So there was a lot of collaboration and partnership, and that really was helpful in making the behavioral science more of a like an everyday term.
So yeah, you came into this environment that was already sort of welcoming for behavioral science, right? They sort of knew this was something they wanted to invest in and kind of build out. And then your team was, you were doing webinars, I'm guessing sort of both internal and external, like you were kind of educating the firm at the same time as like talking with clients as well, or?
Yeah, I would say more 80-20, 80% internal. Actually, more like 90-20 probably. 90% internal and 10% external, because first you've got to have the organization understand behavior science before we can help clients. So being in the vendor side, supplier side, we first had to get our own people comfortable with behavioral science. They don't have to be the expert in behavior science, but comfortable with the behavior science, understand the behavior science, understand the value of behavior science, and be able to, at least talk about behavioral science a little bit, at least to gauge clients' interest and see, is this the right capability to bring it up to clients?
And then are they, we talk about like a centralized team versus sort of a, integrated model. You were obviously a centralized team that was sort of a center of excellence within the firm, and you were educating people enough that they could sort of speak intelligently about behavioral science, but not the expectation that they are like practitioners of behavioral science.
Correct.
So they're kind of feeders to your team, which would go and sort of like either close the deal or actually execute on projects. Is that sort of how it was set up?
Yeah, exactly. So if you think about, when you're in a large organization, and when I joined, it was a behavioral science center, and yet it was just me. So it's really misleading to say that it's a center, because it makes it sounds like I have an army of people that's helping me. That wasn't the case. It was just me. So really, I thought about how to scale this BeSci capabilities and BeSci expertise. So what I did is, they have to have, organizations have to have some base knowledge, and then they would talk to their clients. They would kind of find the right project where behavioral science can contribute, and then come kind of check in with me and my team eventually to see, hey, this is what clients are interested in. This is what our clients need. Do you think behavioral science can help? And to be honest, 90.9% of the time, the answer was yes. Of course, behavioral science is about science of human behaviors. As long as there's a human behavior involved, pretty much, most of the time we're able to help. So yeah, that was kind of thinking, okay, because I cannot possibly go talk to every client that might be interested in behavioral science, that might be open to having a meeting with me. So basically, yeah, the organization, the folks were out there talking to clients, and they have relationship with clients. They can better identify opportunities that I can do anyways.
That totally makes sense. So then was your sort of growth over that period of time driven, you sort of partitioned it essentially and said like, I'll train some of these people to sort of be like a sensing mechanism, and then the growth of your team was driven by like client demand essentially. Is that sort of the right way of thinking about it?
Right. So as an organization, usually there's an investment when there's clients. So definitely there was so we're fortunate that definitely there's a lot of clients interested in behavioral science. So we're getting more and more projects, and we're just out of capacity. We just needed more people. So that's how really I was able to hire people, just to kind of show the demand first, just somehow keep going for a few months without additional resources, and eventually hire more people, train those folks, which allow us to get more project, and which allow me to focus on something a little bit not just the project, executing project, but something a little bit more strategic. And that's how we're able to grow the team.
So I know from there, you've branched back out and have been kind of running your own independent consultancy since then. So maybe tell us a little bit about maybe what like sparked that to kind of start bringing that, your behavioral science expertise in this field to kind of running on your own consultancy, and how that differs from working within a larger organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely different. I'm sure you two can relate that too.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons, right? I mean, when I was at a larger organization, I mean, Ipsos is one of the largest market research companies, a global company. So everybody knew Ipsos. And not only that, I mean, they had a very, very smart, talented, hardworking people that I was able to work with. And it's nice, right? We're having a great colleagues, and I had team. I was able to build a team. I hired every single one of them. So it was a nice environment, and there's a lot of resources. And then I kind of feel like so kind of my business unit or my team is kind of startup company within a large organization, if that makes sense. Because I had to start from the scratch, and it was related but similar to the larger organization because we do behavioral science. Everybody who joined my team, virtually nobody had a market research prior experience. They're all behavioral scientists. So, but we are able to really partner with the rest of our organization to really, make something larger than I think single behavioral scientists can make. But that said, being on your own is also great too, right? And then I know that you two also have experience there too, but you kind of get to do whatever you want to do. So I've been definitely, market research is something I really enjoy. So I'm doing a lot of market research. I have a great, very innovative partner that is full service market research company, and I'm helping them create a behavioral science capabilities. So I'm kind of getting good side of both. But at the same time, I can apply behavioral science into whatever I would like. It doesn't have to stay within the particular company's mission. Flexible schedule. But at the same time, you don't get your salary automatically deposited into your bank account. So you just got to look out for yourself as well.
Yeah, many differences there, both good and bad. As far as the work and applying the behavioral work, have you seen big differences in what clients maybe are asking for, or have you started finding new applications that you might not have seen before? Or is how's maybe your approach evolved between working in a big company and working with some smaller ones, across the consulting world?
That's a good. I don't think I've seen much, and probably partially because most of the market research I do now at my own consulting company comes through the full service market research, at least most of them. So that's how I'm part of the larger team. So again, I do market research, but I don't want to definitely claim that I'm a market research expert. I'm an expert in applying behavioral science into market research. So I have a partner that moderate the session for me, sort of do the recruiting for me, do the screener for me. So that's probably a really good thing that I haven't really seen any much difference actually.
Yeah, it sounds like you get to focus on that core competency and just expand there, but you're applying that too, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an interesting way of describing yourself, sort of a expert in this sort of specific area of applying behavioral science to market research. If there are other folks that are interested in developing, that same expertise, how would you recommend that they go about doing that?
So you mean if you want to be develop behavioral science capabilities in financial decision making, or?
Well, I mean more even specifically just within market research itself, right? So there may be folks who that's the area that they're working in, or they work at one of these big firms and they're interested in sort of becoming the behavioral expert within their company on this. How would you sort of guide them if that's a question that they have?
Well, we both are on UPenn's advisory board.
That's right. They're technically a sponsor of this podcast as well. So
there you go. I didn't get the memo, but hey.
Yeah.
I mean, like UPenn, they have a fantastic program, and I've been academic for a very, very long time, and I really love learning. At the same time, it's really difficult for me if there isn't any structure, to be honest. So really going back to school was really worked out for me. So, I know that a lot of people are kind of looking into going to a graduate school, but, that's not always either that's what people want or that's possible given the place they are. Oh, you know what? Read my chapter. Right? Duh.
That's the obvious choice, yeah.
Of course, that's the obvious. Sorry, I didn't get the memo either. Yeah, read my chapter, and you know what? I actually do have. I don't know if this is appropriate to say here. If not, then you can cut me because this sounds like a self-promotion. But I am actually preparing a course on behavioral science for market researchers. So if you're interested, follow me, LinkedIn or something, connect with me, and I can tell you more details. Because to be honest, I don't know any other organized resources. So if anybody knows, please do let me know.
Yeah, it seems like it's definitely a new kind of, it's kind of why earlier on we wanted to make sure we covered a little bit more of the background of market research, because it's not a topic that I think comes up as often.
Right.
And to your point, there's not as many people working in that area, but the more you describe it, it's such an obvious application of it. It seems like a big opportunity there. So we're glad you're filling that gap and providing that for us.
It's a perfect sort of segue into our final kind of question for you, which is just, where can people stay in touch with you, to either follow your work, or, if there's anything that you want to sort of plug for them, some of which you already have. So this is a good segue into that.
Yeah. That's a great question. Probably LinkedIn is the best place to kind of follow me. I haven't been active, but I will be soon. So I will be definitely promoting this podcast. And so right now I've been kind of doing a lot of different things, and the market research definitely is the one thing. And I've been also, I think this is really timely, but I've always was interested in employee behavior, like what makes people happy at their workplace, and sometimes why do they stay when they're not exactly happy. And that's something that I've been really, really interested in since probably college. And then I started to study behavioral science, and I really I got the theoretical understanding of how people make decisions, how emotionally influence decisions, how context influence decisions. But I didn't have enough sort of the applied industry experience. So now that I've been in the industry for a while, I'm actually putting those together and then helping companies on a more of the employee engagement side as well. So I'm working with the companies who was, like many other companies these days, I'm sure, experiencing really, really high attrition rate. So they brought me in. I did a in-depth discovery, and then talked to their employees. They let us talk to their employees, including the one who recently left, and really understand, okay, what's going on. And then based on that, we also did a literature review, and then really pinpointed a couple different frameworks. And one of them was perceived control. People just didn't feel like they have control over their environment, over their lives, and they just felt helpless. And that's why they left. So those are kind of things that, again, I don't think, at least I haven't been exposed many instances where behavioral science are using to increase employee engagement, and then really helping with this. These days everybody seems to be leaving. So like, how do we, what company can do if obviously that's not what they're looking for. So we have those. We're writing some stuff, and soon hopefully we'll be promoting. So yes, I guess long story short, LinkedIn probably is the best place to go. And feel free to message me directly.
Well, it's super exciting, and it seems like a natural extension of the work that you've done already, right? Just as you were describing it, I was thinking of what you were saying related to market research and understanding sort of like not just the what, but why are people doing these things, and employing some of the techniques and frameworks and lit review processes and stuff that you've already sort of developed this expertise in. So very, very exciting. So thank you very much for joining us to talk through this. Thanks, of course, for writing your chapter in the book as well. And we look forward to talking with you again soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. That concludes this edition of Action Design Radio, hosted by Erik Johnson and Zarak Khan. All podcast episodes are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and many other platforms where you might typically get your pod on. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Special thanks to Morgan Bortz for design, and as always, we would like to recognize Steve Wendell, founder of the Action Design Network, a nonprofit organization dedicated to spreading awareness about behavioral economics, psychology, and all things behavioral science in order to help you improve your life, your career, and your understanding of the world around us and the people in it. I am your producer and audio engineer, Zach Simon. For more cutting-edge behavioral science content, visit action-design.org. Once again, that's action-design.org. There, you can sign up for our newsletter and find an in-person event happening near you. We have chapters in over a dozen cities in the United States and Canada. Also, on our website, you can find additional notes and links regarding the topics discussed in today's episode. Thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you again soon.